Live from Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York City, I'm Matt Miller.
And from our studios in Washington, D.C., I'm Kaylee Lyons. Welcome to Bloomberg Crypto, a look at the people, transactions, and technology shaping the world of decentralized finance. Coming up, wait-and-see mode. For an asset that's known to be highly volatile, Bitcoin has been shedding that characteristic lately. John Wu of Avalanche joins us to discuss the muted moves.
And a deluge of meme coins and NFTs are reshaping the revenue profile for Bitcoin miners. But how long will that last? We'll discuss with the co-founder and the COO of Magic Eden.
And mounting market, legal, and regulatory challenges in the U.S. are clouding Gemini's future as it seeks an overseas reset. We've got exclusive details on the Winklevoss twins' pivot. So all of that is ahead, but first, let's get a snapshot of the market. The best way to do that on your Bloomberg terminal, CRYP Go. And what you will find is it is indeed a very muted day for Bitcoin. It is basically unchanged on the day, trading at $27,700. We remain in this range of between 26 to 28,000 that we have been in for weeks now. And today, that is not changing at all in a material way. Ether, on the other hand, up about 0.5%. Again, not a massive move, trading at 1,902. Ripple, though, XRP rather, is really what is outperforming, up about 6.2% on the day. So that is really the outperformer when it comes to digital assets at the moment. Meanwhile, Solana up 2.6%. So still outperforming the two biggest guys, but it is XRP that really takes the cake on that one today, Matt.
Yeah, interesting to see those big moves, outsized moves in Ripple. We haven't seen that in Bitcoin of late, a move above or below 6% as the market and investors kind of wait and see what's going to happen with this debt ceiling drama. You can see in this chart, which goes back to the beginning of 2022, we have been up and down, obviously, with the volatility of Bitcoin, quite often below or above 6%, but we haven't really since the middle of March moved into that range. Here's what our guests have said about the potential impact of the debt ceiling drama.
When that sort of X date arrives and the debt ceiling gets lifted, you're going to have this kind of liquidity draining event.
Liquidity conditions have significantly deteriorated in the last month.
These fiat economies can only really survive on more and more debt.
All of these issues with the US dollar and banks, a lot of things happen.
And the consequence of that is you're over time debasing fiat currency.
One solution to debt to GDP being 125% will ultimately be inflationary. And so I think that'll be supportive to the price of Bitcoin.
Ultimately, over the sort of medium term, this again will be supportive and bullish for Bitcoin.
All right, so the debt ceiling drama, just another reminder that the crypto economy has strong links to the TradFi system. Bloomberg Sonali Bassick joins us now for a closer look. Sonali?
Thank you, Matt. In the run-up to the U.S. debt ceiling's X date, just like many other types of financial firms, stablecoin issuer Circle moved to reduce its risk tied to government bonds. The firm rid itself of U.S. treasuries maturing after early June, just in case the country reached the brink and couldn't repay its debts. U.S.-based Circle, the second largest stablecoin issuer, has almost 30 billion of its USD coin in circulation, with the majority of that money backing those coins in the Circle Reserve Fund. As of May 26th, its holdings for the Circle Reserve Fund largely matured through May 30th, and more than 80% were tied to Treasury repurchase agreements. And that's another market that, in theory, could be heavily impacted if the U.S. were brought to the brink. It's not just stablecoins to think about, it's Bitcoin, too. There's a sense that a clearing of uncertainty around the U.S. debt limit could clear way for risk assets to succeed, and so Bitcoin has been inching higher. But that's not to say there aren't still roadblocks for risk-taking, with rates remaining high on the front end of the curve. John Toro, who leads trading at digital asset exchange Independent Reserve, told Bloomberg that negative carry for long holders of crypto assets could face headwinds. What's more, though, is that even a debt ceiling resolution doesn't mean calm and steady markets are given. The Treasury, in order to rebuild its coffers after running at its driest level since 2017, is set to issue $1 trillion worth of T-bills through the end of the third quarter. And there's a concern that this could tighten markets further until the deluge of issuance steadies. So it could be too soon to tell whether crypto is all clear of the risks tied to U.S. government debts.
All right, very cool, Shanali. Thanks very much for that. Joining us now to talk about this and the other issues in the market of late is John Wu. He is an alumnus of Tiger Management, who now is president of Avalanche, the lead developer of the Avalanche blockchain. John, great to have you on the program with us. Let me first ask you about that debt issuance that Shanali was talking about. We've seen stories over the last couple weeks of how much we could see. $1 trillion, I think, is the top end of the range of estimates. Would that soak up liquidity so much that you don't see anything going to digital assets?
Well, that could be one of the effects. But I think if you see Bitcoin, a lot of these crypto assets, and why it rallied roughly back in March, and most of the rallies come back then, it's because there are really two markets in crypto assets. There's what I call the crypto natives, and that's mostly on chain. And then there's the crypto curious, people who go and buy it through Coinbase and then enter the ecosystem, if you will. I think with the collapse of SVB, it reminded the crypto natives of what distrust they had in general institutions in doing the right things. And that's part of the reason why most of the rally happened back then. The Bitcoin recently has been muted because it's still uncertain. Definitely more printing of money is not good for anyone, but in the deep crypto native ethos, they're still trying to figure out just how much and how bad will immediately affect the psyche of people and the sentiment of people. What you really need to do to get another wave of Bitcoin and basically crypto asset buying is to show real utility and development to get those crypto curious people to get into the crypto ecosystem by buying through call it the centralized exchanges and get into the system.
Okay, so as we talk, John, about the idea of Bitcoin going not a lot of anywhere, looking for, a real catalyst, I at the same time am looking at NVIDIA, for example, up another 4% today, now $1 trillion company. I mean, the surge has been absolutely incredible. And this is all about AI. How does that filter in to the crypto landscape?
Some of the analysts have a 1.6 trillion target price. So basically, there's a lot more to go according to those analysts. But reality is, I think AI plus blockchain technology will help each other come to market faster. AI will definitely help blockchain in terms of security and data analysis. And a core crux of making AI better is basically the filtering of data. In fact, there's a whole industry called ETL, extract, transform, and load data, because data comes from multiple sets and it's not clean and needs to be filtered. Ultimately, blockchain is all about strong data, and that can actually help the smoothness of filtering data into the final product in use for AI. So I think both industries can actually help each other in terms of adoption.
And what are you looking at Avalanche Labs specifically when it comes to that?
I'm glad you're asking that, because we're working on something right now where it will allow the average person to basically code smart contracts in a very easy way using simple English. That's one of the benefits of generative AI. In fact, we talked about it at our Avalanche Summit recently, where we want it so that everyone can adopt this and code in basically, Solidity or whatever language is used on the blockchain that not every coder or developer knows. So this is even more powerful to let people with good business minds who have a good idea to effectively code smart contracts without even needing to learn how to code any type of code or learning Solidity.
So we're going to ask in just a minute when we talk to Zhuoxun from Magic Eden about NFTs coming to the Bitcoin blockchain. But this has been a big debate, as you know, John. The ability now to encode text or images onto the blockchain is going to change the game for miners, but a lot of people are against it. Where do you sit?
Well, I mean, look what happened with Bitcoin. Part of the reason it rose was because of the distrust of banking after SVB, but the ordinals on Bitcoin blockchain show some use cases. So that's also, in fairness, part of the rally in Bitcoin. So then, in theory, that's good activity for Bitcoin to help the miners, like you just said. I think what we've been working on that's actually, in my opinion, more interesting is to work with massive brands out there, whether it's be SK in Korea or US consumer loyalty type programs, where you're using that NFT construct and that provenance to engage with brands' users and to create more engagement, to get better spend, and also to collect their data, especially as we enter privacy and awareness for that and GDPR in Europe. These brands want to be able to get their customers, get them engaged, and not having to reacquire through more advertising spend through Google and Facebook on a repeated basis. I think the adoption of real-world utilities for NFTs is even more exciting, but I'm going to save that PFP stuff for Magic Eden and your next guest.
Well, I'm just thinking about the problem of congestion that we've seen on, Ether and other blockchains. Is that going to be a bigger concern for Bitcoin? Because, we have seen real slowdowns in transaction times.
So Avalanche, the blockchain that Ava Labs created, is Ethereum compatible. And there's also a bridge between Bitcoin to Avalanche as well as Ethereum to Avalanche. So when those spikes happened recently, it definitely increased activity at Avalanche because the pricing is so much better. We just want adoption. The more adoption for all of these change, it helps us all.
All right, John, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Ava Labs president John Wu talking to us about his blockchain Avalanche as well. Coming up, we'll look at the latest moves in NFTs, as I mentioned, with Zhuoxun Yin, co-founder and COO of Magic Eden.
Looking forward to that. Plus, the Winklevoss twins look beyond the U.S. for a reset as their headaches mount for their crypto exchange Gemini. We have more on that still ahead.
And to access all the latest data and news on crypto, check out CRYP Go. On the terminal, this is Bloomberg.
Some of the most exciting but surprising stuff is what comes out of NFTs. These are brands that have ambitions to become the next Disney or Marvel, and using AI to populate the characters, the story, the lore, and even generate some of the art. Very early stages, but some of these brands have gone on to sign deals with Def Jam Records and large studios like Cabanimation. They could be the next Pixars, and it could be all off the back of generative AI.
That was the Solana co-founder Raj Gokul discussing how artificial intelligence will change the NFT ecosystem when joining Bloomberg Crypto a few weeks ago. And joining us now is Zhuoxun Yin. He is co-founder and COO of Magic Eden, the biggest NFT marketplace on the Solana blockchain. So Zhuoxun, thank you so much for being with us. Has AI come yet to Magic Eden in a big way?
Hey, thanks so much for having us, Kaylee. Look, like many folks, we've been following along and really excited about the potential of AI. Think there's many applications for how it might work with crypto. We haven't yet explored deep integrations with Magic Eden, but you even saw, as well, shout out to Raj, but you saw some really recent reference implementation of ChatGPT integrations to query loads of information really quickly on Solana. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We think there's an opportunity here to really supercharge the ways NFTs get created. So Raj there was talking about a lot of the creativity elements, but we also think that a lot of new insights can be generated much more quickly through AI. One of the things we're also really excited about is just the validation of what's real through zero knowledge proofs. So there's many ways that AI can come to the fore, and we haven't yet done the deep integrations, but something we're actively looking at.
Well, and of course, everyone's just really into AI right now, Josh, and it's the buzziest thing, but I'm wondering what else people are into. How have you noticed changes in the types of NFTs people are drawn to on your platform?
Yeah, one of the really interesting things we've been focusing on over the last 4 or 5 months has been continuing to innovate on a number of dimensions. I mean, one of the things that is the perfect time to actually tackle this in this kind of market is continuing to build new technology, supporting new chains, partnering with the best creators. One of those that we've been really excited about is Bitcoin NFTs or Bitcoin ordinals. And we've spent a lot of time recently in the last few months tackling that as a use case. And that is just beginning to poke through as a really green field opportunity, and we've been really excited about it. And I think a lot of the Bitcoin community has been going through an amazing journey the last 3 months. So that's something we've been spending a lot of time on, actually.
How green is it, Josh? And can you quantify for us? Can you give us some hard numbers on, the amount of Bitcoin ordinals trading on your platform compared to NFTs on Solana or Ethereum?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple of stats that I think are really interesting. One is that we've just hit 10 million inscriptions on Bitcoin. And just for those that may not be as familiar, what these are inscriptions that are data that gets inscribed into individual Satoshis. So a Satoshi is 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. And we've just hit 10 million, which goes to show the speed with which this has been developed over the last 4 months. And by the way, going from 1 to 10 million happened in the last 50 days. So just to give you some sense of speed there. On Magic Eden, we started supporting ordinals about 2.5 months ago, so around March. And from April to May, so just in the last 30 days, we've seen about a over 10x increase in the amount of volume that's been bought, sold on Magic Eden. And this just goes to show that, forever people have been talking about like, what's Bitcoin going to be used for outside of just being a decentralized money. And I think this is the first time that we're starting to see some really, really real organic use cases that's really, really beneficial for both obviously miners, but also decentralizing the network and also bringing a lot of mainstream into crypto use cases. If you think about it, Bitcoin has always been the granddaddy of chains, right? At least many people think about it like that. And you combine that with the most mainstream crypto use case, which is NFTs, and there's potentially a massive, massive opportunity here.
So what does that look like in terms of the market share or share on your platform of NFTs? Like 10 million sounds like a ton until you tell me there's 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin, right? So what does that look like compared to how many you've sold versus NFTs you've sold on Solana or NFTs you've sold on Ethereum?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some sense of scale is in about 3 months, Bitcoin ordinals has become the second largest NFT market after Ethereum. So it's about 50% of the Ethereum market. So if you look at the last 30 days, Ethereum is about 400 million in NFTs, in NFT volume. Bitcoin ordinals is about just under 200 million. And about 180 of that million has happened in basically the last 30 days. So we're seeing basically the beginnings of that hockey stick growth, similar to what we saw when we first got going on Solana in September 21. So what we're seeing here is actually really interesting because if you think about what is the reason that people are creating these things on Bitcoin versus some other chain, and we believe in this thesis of, there's a saying I like to use, I don't know if it's common in the US, but it's horses for courses. So you pick the right horse for the right course. And what's happening here is Bitcoin, the blocks are expensive. And as a result, to really want to inscribe data into those blocks, those items will naturally be higher value, right? And that's very different to the use cases that you see on Solana, for example, where we're excited about compressed NFTs. Compression allows you to mint and create 1 million NFTs for about $100, which is by far the cheapest place you can do it. And that brings a whole bunch of different things. It allows you to get NFTs in the hands of many, many more people, which is really different. So as a marketplace, we are all about just driving more and more adoption of NFTs.
Yep.
And whether that's really high value items on the most decentralized, highest value chain where there's most liquidity, which is Bitcoin, versus the ability to create lots and lots of NFTs for all kinds of different use cases like gaming and rewards and loyalty and community building. And we think that can happen really well on a place like Solana. So that just gives you some sense of how we're thinking about the world today. It's really different to where we were 6-9 months ago, where we were also only on one chain. So a lot of innovation, the pace of it has been rapid.
Zhuoxun, thanks so much for joining us. Pleasure having you on the program. Zhuoxun Yin there, co-founder of Magic Eden. Now coming up, the Winklevoss twins are looking for a pivot as legal, regulatory, and market challenges continue to pile up for their crypto exchange firm Gemini. We're going to give you more on that next. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Crypto. I'm Matt Miller in New York with Kaylee Lyons in Washington. Now, Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss have had a turbulent couple of years, from the crypto winter to the latest lawsuit by the SEC against Gemini. Issues around their crypto exchange continue to pile up. And now the twins may look outside of the U.S. for a reset. That's the subject of today's Big Take. Bloomberg's Olga Karif wrote the story and joins us now. So, Olga, talk to us about kind of the downfall of Gemini, and it really seems to be tied closely to the failure of Genesis.
Absolutely. So what happened with Genesis is it was a partner of Gemini, and so a lot of Gemini users lent their coins through Genesis. And when Genesis froze withdrawals and sort of went bankrupt eventually earlier this year, a lot of Gemini users ended up sort of in a bind. And then Gemini got sued by the SEC, like you mentioned, and Genesis as well. And so the exchange is facing a lot of issues, basically shrinking market share, this lawsuit from the SEC. Some executives have been leaving. They had at least, they had 2 rounds of layoffs in the last year. So and in addition to that, there's the regulatory environment in the U.S. that has been sort of tightening its grips on the crypto businesses overall.
So as we talk about how they are pivoting, what all does this entail, Olga?
So in April, they announced that they're launching a crypto derivatives exchange outside of the U.S. It would not serve the U.S. or the U.K. Or the European Union. They've recently been, they announced their new European headquarters in Ireland, and they've been essentially on a charm offensive in the UK, meeting with a lot of regulators and so forth. It seems like they are focusing a lot of their attention outside of the US.
Yeah, and we can see their market share has just collapsed right now. I think less than 0.1% of the total volume. Olga, thanks so much for joining us. Bloomberg's Olga Karif there talking to us about the Big Take today, which focuses on the Winklevoss Gemini. Coming up next, Circle CEO Jeremy Allaire, and next week, I should say, and LMAX Group CEO David Mercer will be joining us. That's it for Bloomberg Crypto. This is Bloomberg.